Hello guys, how are you? Hope you all are good. Welcome to my channel Sci-Fi X. Don't forget to like, comment and share this video. Enjoy the video.
She bought junk on an alien planet for 3 credits. It turned out to be a galactic treasure, and the market stank of something between burnt copper and wet animal fur. And Kara Webb had 40 seconds before the vendor locked his stall. She shoved through a wall of 6-limbed bodies, ducked under a rack of hanging crystals that hummed at frequencies that made her back teeth ache, and slapped 3 credit chips on the cracked stone counter before the vendor even finished turning around. "That," she said. "The gray box." The vendor, a gnarled Vithori, with skin like old bark and 4 eyes arranged in a square, looked at the box, looked at her, and made a sound like a clogged drain. "You want that? I want that." He took the 3 credits with one of his lower hands and pushed the box across the counter with another, as the expression on his face somewhere between pity and confusion. He was already pulling down his stall shutters before she finished picking it up. It weighed almost nothing. Gray-green metal, no seams visible, no buttons, roughly the size of a hardback novel. One corner was slightly dented. There was a symbol etched on one face that she did not recognize. Not any of the 14 scripts she had learned in her 3 years hauling cargo across the outer sectors. She turned it over. Nothing. She tucked it under her arm and walked back toward Docking Bay 9. Kara Webb was 29 years old and piloted a second-hand freighter called the Linden that smelled permanently of engine coolant and the dried fruit the previous owner had apparently stored everywhere. She had no crew. She had a route. The route paid just enough to keep the Linden running and herself fed. And she had learned not to want things that cost more than she carried in her left boot at any given time. The box had cost 3 credits. 3 credits was 1 meal on a station. It was nothing. She did not know why she bought it. She set it on the co-pilot seat and strapped it in out of habit, which she realized immediately was strange. But she did not unstrap it. The Linden broke orbit from the dust-colored rock the locals called Velith Prime and punched into transit. The stars went long and thin. The box sat in the co-pilot seat with the quiet authority of something that had been waiting. She made coffee. Real coffee. The expensive kind she rationed carefully. She sat back in the pilot chair and looked at the box while she drank it. It was not doing anything. She was not expecting it to do anything. It did something anyway. Not a sound. Not a light. More like the air around it shifted, the way air shifts near a heat vent, except the Linden ran cold. She felt it in the base of her skull first, a pressure, not painful, not even unpleasant, more like the sensation of a word on the tip of her tongue that wouldn't come. Then the symbol on the face of the box began to glow. Not aggressively, not dramatically. A quiet amber like an ember that had been waiting for someone to notice it. Kara set her coffee down very carefully. She reached across and touched the symbol with one finger. The box opened. Not with a click, not with a hiss, it simply unfolded. 4 panels peeling back without a sound, like a flower that had decided it was ready. And inside there was nothing she could name. A lattice of something translucent, pale gold, geometric in ways that didn't map onto any geometry she had studied. It sat suspended inside the open box without touching the sides. It rotated slightly, as if adjusting, as if looking at her. She pulled her hand back. The lattice pulsed once. Amber. Warm. "Okay," Kara said to the empty cockpit. The Linden's basic scanner pinged. She looked at the readout without thinking and felt the words leave her brain before they reached her mouth. Every material scanner she had was reading the object as unknown. Not unidentified. Unknown. There was a difference. Unidentified meant the system hadn't found a match. Unknown meant the system had found something and had no category to put it in. She had been hauling cargo for 3 years. She had carried everything from livestock to medical supplies to crates of components she had been paid specifically not to scan. Her scanner had never returned unknown. She ran it twice more. Unknown. Unknown. The lattice continued its slow rotation. There was something almost patient about it. Something that made her feel, absurdly, like she was the one being assessed. She closed her hand around her coffee mug again because her hand needed something to do. The nearest inhabited system with an actual research presence was 11 hours away. She had a delivery scheduled at a depot on Rekis Station in 6. She was already behind on her last 3 payments to the Port Authority at Velith for a docking violation. She was technically contesting. She looked at the glowing object sitting open in the co-pilot seat. She changed course for the research station. The delivery could wait. She did not ask herself why, because the answer was already in her chest, lodged somewhere below the practical part of her brain, the part that had kept her alive and solvent for 3 years on the edge of mapped space. It was not greed. It was not even curiosity. Not exactly. It was recognition. She had felt it when she touched the symbol. Something in the box had recognized her touching it and responded. She could not explain that. She could not explain why the scanner had no words for what she was carrying. She could not explain why the lattice had opened for her and not presumably for whoever had sold it to a dusty stall on Velith Prime for 3 credits. What she could explain was this. In 11 hours, she would have answers, or she would have more questions. And either way, she would no longer be a cargo hauler who had bought a piece of junk because 40 seconds and 3 credits and something she could not name. The Linden hummed. The amber light was steady. Kara Webb drank her coffee and flew towards something she did not yet have a word for. Part 2. Well, the research station was called Meridian Outpost, which sounded grander than it looked. It was a pressurized ring bolted to an asteroid, run by a consortium of 3 universities, none of which were particularly well funded, and staffed mostly by researchers who had either chosen the outer sectors on purpose or had ended up there because of professional situations they did not discuss at dinner. Kara docked at 0340 station time. The attendant at the airlock was a heavy-set man named Lou, who looked at her with the expression of someone who had stopped being surprised by anything that arrived before dawn. "Materials research," she said. "Who do I talk to?" Lou pointed down a corridor without looking up from his panel. The corridor smelled like recycled air and instant noodles, and the particular kind of desperation that lives in places where smart people work for not enough money. Kara walked it with a box under her arm. Closed now, dormant, gray, and featureless again, like it had never done anything at all. She found the materials lab because it was the only room with lights on. Through the window in the door, she could see a woman bent over a workbench, hair pulled back badly, one earpiece in, talking to herself or to something Kara couldn't see. Kara knocked. The woman looked up. Mid-30s, sharp eyes behind plain frames, the look of someone interrupted in the middle of a thought they were not going to lose. "What?" "I need someone to look at something." "It's 4 in the morning." "I know." The woman looked at the box under Kara's arm. Something in her expression shifted, barely perceptible, like a single card moved in a deck. "Come in," she said. Her name was Dr. Nina Cole. She had been at Meridian for 2 years studying pre-collapse materials from the outer sectors, which was a field narrow enough that it had approximately 11 active practitioners in the known galaxy, and none of them were getting rich. She put the box on the scanning table without touching it, the way someone touches something they already know is interesting. "Where did you get this?" Velith Prime Market. Now 3 credits. Nina looked at her. 3 credits. The vendor seemed happy to get rid of it. Nina pulled on examination gloves and turned the box over, slowly examining each face. She stopped at the symbol. Do you know this script? No, I know 14. It's not any of them. Nina set the box down and went to her terminal and typed something. Then typed something else. Then sat back and stared at the screen. Show me where you bought it. The exact stall, if you have coordinates. Kara pulled up her nav log and fed the coordinates to Nina's terminal. Nina looked at them and said nothing for a long time. What? Kara said. Those coordinates put the market stall approximately 40 kilometers from what we have flagged as a suspected Ven site. Kara had heard of the Ven, and everyone in the outer sectors had heard of the Ven, the same way everyone had heard of dark matter and quantum entanglement, as a thing that was real and also completely outside the normal texture of daily life. The Ven were pre-collapse, old beyond a framework Kara had ever needed to apply to anything. A civilization that had risen, expanded, and vanished from the galactic record roughly 400,000 years before humans had gotten around to inventing writing. The Ven? Kara said. The Ven, Nina said. Kara looked at the box. Nina looked at the box. May I try to open it? Nina said. Sure. Nina pressed the symbol. Nothing happened. She pressed it again, applied different pressure, tried a lateral motion, tried pressing the center of each face in sequence. The box remained a box. Gray-green metal, dented corner, inert. Nina looked at Kara. It opened for you? Yes. First touch? Yes. Nina pulled off her gloves and folded her hands on the table in the manner of someone preparing to say something that would require both of them to remain calm. What you are carrying, she said, if it is what I think it is not a piece of junk. The Ven did not make junk. Everything they produced had a specific function, and most of what we have flagged as Ven materials over the past 30 years has been non-interactive, inert. We have never, in the entire history of outer sector research, recovered a Ven artifact that responds to human contact. Kara let that sit for a moment. So, what does it do? I don't know yet. But the fact that it opened for you and not for me suggests it is not malfunctioning. It is selecting. Selecting what? Nina looked at her in the particular way that scientists look at things they are about to spend the rest of their career on. That, she said, is the question. Kara should have felt something enormous then. Triumph or fear or the weight of accidental history. Instead, she felt the specific tiredness of someone who had been awake for 22 hours and had skipped a delivery that was going to cost her in the morning. I need coffee, she said. Real coffee. Then you can run every test you have. Nina already had the scanner array swinging into position. I have terrible coffee, she said without looking up. That's fine, Kara said. I'm used to it. The lattice inside the box was still rotating. She could feel it through the metal. A faint vibration, steady and patient. The way a compass needle finds north. She wrapped both hands around the mug Nina handed her and watched the machines begin to try to understand what a cargo hauler with a dented scanner and a missed delivery had accidentally pulled out of the oldest civilization in the known galaxy for the price of a bad meal. The amber glow bled through the gray casing and painted the whole table gold. Nina's hands were shaking, just slightly, on the keyboard. Kara noticed. She didn't say anything. Some things you let a person have. Part 3. The first test took 4 hours and returned results that Nina described as technically impossible, which Kara had started to understand was Nina's version of screaming. The lattice was not a solid, not a liquid. not a gas. Not a plasma. The scanner identified it, correctly and repeatably, as all four simultaneously, which was the kind of result that either meant the equipment was catastrophically broken or the object was operating on principles the equipment was not built to measure. Nina ran the equipment diagnostics. The equipment was fine. She ran the test again. All four, simultaneously. Kara was on her third coffee, sitting in the one chair that wasn't covered in research papers, watching Nina fill a second screen with calculations that looked like someone had tried to write a novel in a language made entirely of math. "Explain it to me," Kara said. Nina didn't look up. The Venn apparently solved the phase problem. What's the phase problem? The reason matter exists as solid, liquid, gas, or plasma is because energy states are exclusive at stable temperatures. You cannot have ice and steam at the same temperature and pressure. The rules don't allow it. Nina finally looked up. This object is not following the rules. It's breaking physics. It's not breaking physics. It's operating on physics we don't have yet. There's a difference. Nina turned back to her screen. Breaking physics would be terrifying. This is just far ahead of us. Kara looked at the box, open on the table, the lattice rotating its slow, patient rotation. "What does it do?" she said. "Practically. What is it for?" "I think it's a key." "A key to what?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out." Nina pulled up a star map on the secondary screen, one Kara didn't recognize, the sector markings in an unfamiliar notation. There are 9 confirmed Venn sites in the outer sectors. Suspected sites, maybe 40. Most of what we've recovered from them is structural. Walls, foundations, materials. Nothing functional. Nothing that activates. She zoomed in on one point. But 18 months ago, a survey team on Lear 4 found a chamber. Sealed. No entrance we could identify. Carvings on every surface in a script that matches what's on your box. Kara stood up. She crossed to the screen. The carvings on the screen image were dense, layered, running in spirals across what looked like a curved wall of the same gray-green metal as the box. And at the center of the largest spiral, a recessed panel. Circular, roughly hand-sized, with a symbol in its center that was, unmistakably, the same symbol etched on the box. "How long ago did you find this?" Kara said. "The survey team found it. I got the report 14 months ago. I've been trying to get funding to mount a proper expedition ever since." Nina's voice had gone flat in the specific way of someone explaining a wound they had stopped bleeding from only by holding very still. "The consortium does not consider a sealed chamber on an uninhabited rock in Sector 7 a priority allocation. But now you have the key." Nina looked at the box, at the lattice, at Kara. "Now I have the key," she said. "Assuming that's what it is. Assuming it works. Assuming the chamber hasn't been disturbed in 14 months of—" She stopped. Kara watched her stop. "What?" Nina turned back to her terminal and pulled up a message log. She scrolled through it without speaking, and then stopped on one entry dated 11 days ago. A research vessel registered to an organization called the Deveth Institute filed a survey permit for the Lear 4 site, Nina said. 11 days ago. Kara had never heard of the Deveth Institute. Nina had, clearly, because she sat down. "Who are they?" Kara said. "Private, very private, funded by parties who prefer not to be named in public records. They have been acquiring Venn materials for at least a decade through a network of brokers and—" Nina paused. "Market vendors." Kara felt something cold settle in her stomach. Like the vendor on Velith Prime. Like the vendor on Velith Prime. 11 days. They had filed a permit 11 days ago. Kara had bought the box yesterday. The vendor had sold it for 3 credits, almost nothing. The price of something he was desperate to move, or something he had been told to move quickly once a buyer arrived. Except the buyer had not arrived, or had arrived too late, or... They were looking for the box, Kara said. I think someone in their network acquired it, and the transaction failed before it reached them. And then you walked up and bought it for 3 credits. Nina's voice was careful now, deliberate. They are going to realize what happened. Possibly they already have. How long before they get to Lear 4? Nina checked something. At survey vessel speed from their last registered position, 6 days, maybe 5. Kara did the math. The Linden was fast. It was old and it smelled like coolant and dried fruit. But she had spent 3 years pushing it through routes that required speed over comfort. And she had modified the transit drive twice in ways that were technically not sanctioned, but were definitely effective. I can get there in 4, she said. Nina looked at her. You are a cargo hauler. I'm a cargo hauler who owns the only key to a 400,000-year-old door that someone very well funded wants very badly. Kara said, What do you want to do? Wait for the next research grant? Nina stood up. She pulled off her glasses, cleaned them on her shirt, and put them back on. It was the gesture of someone reaching a decision. I need 1 hour to pack equipment, she said. I'll be at the docking bay, Kara said. She picked up the box. The amber glow was steady through her fingers, warm, like the object was running on something that had been waiting 400,000 years to be used. She walked back down the corridor that smelled like instant noodles and other people's ambitions. Lou at the airlock didn't look up. Back already, he said. Heading out, Kara said. Rough night. She thought about Nina's shaking hands and the spiral carvings and a sealed door on an uninhabited rock that a dead civilization had apparently locked 400,000 years ago, and left a key for a human cargo hauler to buy for 3 credits in a smelly market on Velith Prime. Interesting night, she said. She walked through the airlock into the Linden. She strapped the box back into the co-pilot seat. 4 days to Liar 4. 5 days before the people who wanted this arrived. 1 day of margin. 1 day was enough. It had to be. The Linden's engines turned over, and Kara Webb flew toward the oldest locked door in the known galaxy with a materials scientist, a second-hand freighter, and the quiet company of something that glowed like it had been waiting for exactly this. Part 4, Lear 4 was the color of an old bruise, purple-gray rock under a dim orange star, no atmosphere worth breathing without a suit. They came out of transit 4 hours ahead of Nina's estimate, which Kara logged as a personal record and did not celebrate because there was no time. The Venn chamber was 17 kilometers from the survey marker. They took the Linden's surface crawler, a battered 4-wheeled unit that sounded like someone shaking a jar of bolts, and followed Nina's coordinates across a landscape that had never, in all the billions of years of this rock's existence, had anything interesting happen on it until now. The entrance to the chamber wasn't visible. Nina had warned her. They parked the crawler at the coordinates and stood on gray-purple rock under an orange sky, and Kara turned slowly, looking for anything that wasn't geology. Here, Nina said. She pressed her palm to a section of rock that looked identical to every other section of rock. A hairline seam appeared, then another. A panel, roughly 2 meters by 2 meters, outlined itself in a faint amber light that made Kara's chest tighten because it was the same amber as the box. It's responding, Nina said. Her voice had gone to something just above a whisper. To proximity. The key is activating it just by being near. Kara pulled the box from her pack. It was already open. The lattice rotating with more urgency than she had seen before, the amber light brighter, almost warm through her suit glove. She pressed it against the symbol on the panel. The rock moved. Not dramatically, not explosively. It moved the way a very old door moves when it has been sealed for a very long time and was built to last forever. With weight, with authority, with the grinding certainty of something that does not rush. The panel sank 2 centimeters and slid aside. Behind it was darkness and air, actual breathable air. Nina's suit monitor confirmed it in a reading that was, as she said in a flat voice, technically impossible for a chamber sealed for 400,000 years. They went in. Kara had her helmet light. Nina had a scanner array that she had assembled and disassembled and reassembled during the transit, because she did not know how to do nothing. The chamber was roughly circular, 12 meters across. The curved walls covered floor to ceiling in the dense spiral script Kara had seen on Nina's screen. In the center of the chamber, a column rose from the floor to the ceiling, the same gray-green metal, covered in the same script. And set into the column at chest height was a second recessed panel. Circular, hand-sized, symbol in its center. Nina's scanner was already running. She was narrating into a recorder in a voice that had lost all of its careful flatness and was just barely holding together. The air composition matches standard oxygen-nitrogen ratios, with trace elements I'm not identifying yet. The ambient temperature is 19 degrees Celsius. The script on the walls is... It's a continuous document. The spirals connect. It's one continuous text that covers the entire surface. This is... She stopped. Restarted. This is the largest sample of Venn script ever recovered by several orders of magnitude. What we have from other sites is fragments. This is a library. Kara walked to the column. The symbol on the recessed panel matched. It always matched. She pressed the box against it. The column opened. Inside was a single object. A sphere, roughly the size of a human fist. The same gray-green metal, completely featureless except for a faint pattern across its surface. Lines that curved and intersected in ways that kept resolving into almost shapes before dissolving. Kara reached in and took it. It was heavier than it looked, warmer than the ambient temperature. And when her bare fingers made contact through the glove gap at her wrist, she heard something. Not with her ears. With something that sat behind her ears and had never registered anything before. A tone, clean and deep, and underneath it something she could not call a voice, except that it had the quality of one. She pulled her hand back. The tone stopped. "Kara," Nina said, "I heard something." Nina crossed to her. "Heard what?" "I don't know. When I touched it directly, not through the glove." Nina looked at the sphere. She reached out and touched it through her glove. Nothing. "It's doing the same thing as the box," Nina said. "It's selecting." "What am I?" Kara said. "That it keeps selecting me?" Nina had no answer. She took 15 readings of the sphere in Kara's hand from 3 different angles and filed them all. And then looked at Kara with the expression of someone who has just confirmed that the question is larger than they thought. Kara's suit radio chirped. "Lou, from Meridian," which meant he was routing through the station relay and the signal had bounced across 2 sectors to find her. "Got a vessel query for your Linden," Lou said in his unhurried way. "Survey class, no identifier flag. Came through the relay asking if I'd seen a freelance freighter by that name. Didn't answer when I asked why." "When?" Kara said. 20 minutes ago. Thought you'd want to know." 20 minutes. She had 4 days of margin, and it had become 20 minutes. because someone in the Devith Institute network had connected the dots between Velith Prime and Nina's research permit and the Meridian Outpost docking log faster than either of them had calculated. Nina was already closing her scanner array. "We need to leave," Kara said. "I need 10 more minutes." "We don't have 10 more minutes." Kara put the sphere in her pack next to the box. "Nina, we leave now." Nina looked at the walls, at the library of script that covered every surface, at the 400,000-year record of a civilization she had spent her career looking for traces of. She looked for 4 seconds. She turned and walked to the door. The panels sealed behind them with the same unhurried grinding authority. By the time they reached the crawler, Kara could see a light in the orange sky that hadn't been there when they landed. A vessel descending. She drove. The crawler's top speed was not impressive. It was enough. The Linden was already running pre-launch diagnostics on remote trigger when they reached it, and they were in the air before the descending vessel had touched down. Kara pushed the transit drive past its recommended output threshold. The stars went long and thin. Behind them, on Layer 4, a sealed door sat in the gray-purple rock with no key to open it and nothing to show a very well-funded organization that had arrived 40 minutes too late. Kara held the pack on her lap for the first hour of transit because she was not ready to put it down. Nina sat in the co-pilot seat where the box usually went and ran calculations on her handheld and did not speak for a very long time. Then she said, "The sphere. I think it's a storage medium." "Storing what?" "Everything," Nina said. "I think it's storing everything." Part 5. They went to Earth because Nina said if she went anywhere else with what she was carrying, it would be acquired before she finished docking. Kara had not been to Earth in 4 years. She had left because it was crowded and expensive and full of people who wanted things from her. And she had found the outer sectors easier, which she had always suspected said something about her that she was not going to examine too closely. Earth's orbital authority cleared them through after a 20-minute hold that was longer than usual and shorter than Kara feared. Nina had made 3 encrypted calls during the transit, and by the time they docked at the Geneva port facility, there were people waiting. Not the kind of people Kara usually met. Not Lou from the airlock people. These were the kind of people who wore their authority so quietly it looked like ordinary clothing. Dr. Paul Nader from the Institute for Xenological Research. Dr. Yuki Osei, who was apparently so senior in her field that she had a title that required a pause before you said it. 2 people from a department whose name was 4 initials that Kara did not ask about. They brought the sphere and the box into a sealed room, and Kara sat outside it with bad coffee from a machine in the corridor and waited. Nina came out after 3 hours with red eyes and the expression of someone who has had a very large thing confirmed. She sat down next to Kara. "The sphere is a data archive," she said. "Full Venn record. Language, science, history, biology, navigation, everything. 400,000 years of accumulated knowledge from a civilization that was operating across 11 star systems before humans were using fire." Kara held her coffee. "And it opened for me," she said. "Yes." "Why?" Nina was quiet for a moment. She had the look of someone choosing which version of the truth to say first. "Paul has a theory," she said. "It's early, it's not confirmed." "Tell me anyway." The Venn were not randomly distributed across 11 systems. They were guided. There are references in the archive. Paul has had the translation program running since we arrived. It's only got about 3% of the text so far. But the references suggest that the Venn knew they were going to disappear. Not from war, not from disaster. They chose it. They reached a point in their development where continued existence in physical form was. They describe it as finished. Kara looked at the door of the sealed room. They left on purpose, she said. They left things behind on purpose, Nina said. The archive, the chambers, the key. They designed all of it to respond to a specific kind of contact. Not any intelligent species, not just humans. A specific, they use a word that Paul is translating as something between potential and readiness. A civilization that is far enough along to find the key, but not so far along that it doesn't need what's inside. Kara thought about this for a long time. They were looking for a civilization like us, she said. They were looking for a civilization exactly like us, Nina said. Young enough to still need guidance, old enough to go looking. The corridor was quiet. Somewhere deeper in the building, Kara could hear the hum of equipment processing 400,000 years of knowledge from the greatest civilization the galaxy had ever produced. I bought it for 3 credits, Kara said. Nina made a sound that was almost a laugh. The vendor probably had no idea what he had. Or he'd had it for years and it hadn't done anything for anyone who touched it, so he priced it as scrap. And it was waiting. Apparently. Kara thought about the amber glow. The way the lattice had rotated when she first touched the symbol. The tone she had heard through the gap in her glove on Lyre 4 sovereigned that deep, clean note that sat behind her ears. She thought about 3 years on the edge of mapped space, hauling cargo that didn't belong to her toward stations she didn't care about, living carefully inside a life that was small enough not to break. What happens now? She said. Now there will be an official expedition to Lyre 4. The archive gets translated. Paul says it will take years, probably decades, for a full translation. The Ven apparently left quite a lot to say. Nina paused. And they'll want to talk to you, extensively, about the selection mechanism, about what it means that it responded to you. I'm a cargo hauler. You're the first human to successfully interact with Ven technology in 400,000 years of it, sitting there waiting, Nina said. You can call yourself whatever you want. It's going to mean something regardless. The door to the sealed room opened. Paul Nader came out and looked at Kara with the careful expression of a man who had just revised everything he thought he knew and was in the process of building something new in its place. We'd like to speak with you, he said. When you're ready. Kara looked at her coffee. It was cold. It had been cold for an hour. She thought about the Linden, sitting in the dock, smelling of coolant and old dried fruit and 3 years of careful small living. She thought about the delivery she had missed and the Port Authority violation she was still technically contesting and the route that paid just enough. She thought about the tone she had heard. Just once. Through a gap in a suit glove on a purple-gray rock under an orange star. She stood up. I'm ready, she said. Paul nodded and held the door. Kara Webb walked into the room where the oldest library in the known galaxy sat open and waiting. And she did not look back at the corridor or the cold coffee or the careful small life she had built to fit inside a second-hand freighter with a bad smell and just enough fuel. Some doors, once opened, do not close. She had known that since the amber light first touched her hand on Velith Prime. 3 credits. The price of a bad meal. The price of the rest of everything. She sat down, folded her hands on the table, and began.